Have any of you ever heard that saying, you reap what you sow? We haven't done a proverb in a long time. Maybe I already did this one. I don't know. But in fact, if you are only joining this channel in the last year, before that, back in the day, I would do these deep dives on proverbs and how they often contribute to either why people get stuck in these narcissistic relationships or that this old proverby wisdom was actually a lot smarter than how we think about relationships now. Now, when to hear you reap what you sow is not a good one for someone to hear for anyone who goes through any kind of narcissistic relationship. Actually, you reap what you sow is a paraphrasing of verse from the Bible, Galatians, and basically means you will face consequences for what you do down the road as well. And strangely, we often use this saying, you reap what you sow, to shame and blame survivors. Well, you picked him, so you're stuck with him. And what we don't do is try to understand the narcissistic person's behavior. Well, you cheated on him, so that's why she left. No. Instead, we blame the person for being cheated on. You reap what you sow. The inspiration from this video came from someone who was stuck in a narcissistic relationship. This person's been married for about 25 years, plus or minus, couldn't get out of the relationship. There were a lot of financial ties, they had kids, there were some other practical factors. But it was a soul-sapping and miserable relationship. Lots of baiting, lots of gaslighting, passive-aggressive stuff, lots of nitpicking. The person in the relationship, by her own admission, was a little trauma bonded. But I don't know, talking to her, I wasn't even sure about that. She knew she was stuck because of all these practical issues for a while, and was trying to sort of make the so-called best of it. So she would grasp onto tiny moments of normal, but she seemed to know what she was doing. The part that concerned me was when she shrugged and said about herself, you reap what you sow. And in essence, she said, well, maybe I created this monster. And I said, no. This idea that lots of narcissistic partners and spouses have, that I somehow created this problem. I guess you thought you created it by not setting boundaries, good luck with that, or speaking out against them, or letting them get away with stuff, or feeling that you were a doormat, is absolute nonsense. You sowed nothing. You're reaping plenty. They were them. You met a person, and they did whatever they did at the beginning of the relationship that might have attracted you. Grandiose, fancy love bombing, the sad sack love, please save me love bombing, feeling like they chose you over someone else love bombing, and then the whole devalue happens, you get stuck. And remember, they were also drawn to you. Their behavior, the entitlement, the arrogance, the manipulation, all of it, that's on them. You didn't create that. It was there long before you met them. And in most cases, you didn't know what you were up against. But that reap-sow lady I was talking with, she pushed it a step further. She acknowledged, okay, all right, Dr. Ramani, I know I didn't create this. This was his overindulgent mother and invalidating and cruel father. That's what she believed created it. However, her belief was she reinforced and enabled it, and that's why it got so bad. That's what she thought she was sowing, right? That she was complicit in her husband's adult narcissism. To which I said to her, no, again. This woman was showing up as an empathic, supportive, kind partner every day with someone who did not notice her, viewed her at best as a convenience who met his needs, who was pathologically selfish and didn't ever take notice of what she was feeling. And if she did attempt to make something known or clarify or explain, he would talk over her, ignore her, gaslight her, or tell her that she was being entitled or difficult. But she wouldn't let go of the reaping and sowing and said, well, listen, Dr. Ramani, I could have left. In her story, she said it felt normal-ish as a relationship for a few years and got much worse after they had kids. She herself had a very narcissistic, mean, and controlling father and a silenced and fearful mother. Her husband wasn't as bad as her father, And her extended family gave her the whole BS about your father's a great self-made man, blah, blah, blah. So that distorted sense of not really being clear on what constituted safe behavior in a relationship for a long time, right? She knew her mother was unhappy, but there was really no word for what was happening in their marriage, or at least not one she knew about. And even when her husband was a smaller scale ass in the early years of their relationship and marriage, she assumed it was growing pains. And it still, though, wasn't as bad as her father. So she persisted. They had a decent enough life, and then she had kids. The bottom fell out of this marriage. At his insistence and at his encouraging, she stopped working, and then it was stuck city. They did not have sufficient support to help with their children, and her job, when she did have one, was sort of close to a break even on childcare costs anyhow. The decisions made sense at the time. She wasn't thinking that she was going to have to hold on to a job, so she would have had a financial means to escape, and ultimately, that wouldn't have mattered anyhow. She analyzed everything that happened and always came to the conclusion, each terrible day in that relationship, that she was reaping what she sowed by staying, by not standing up to him, by not setting boundaries, by leaving her job when she had children. But what she didn't do was take the very clear step of noting that his behavior was unacceptable. Her not setting a boundary or pushing back or sharing her feelings, those things didn't cause his invalidation or his manipulation or his entitlement, his rage, his petulant tantrums, his financial control, his selfishness. Those were who he was. And since nobody teaches us about this stuff when we're younger, and we sell people on a tired and harmful narrative of relationships are work and you need to stick it out. And many people have a terrible template from marriage from watching their parents. Hell, she didn't even have the instruction manual for this. We have got to stop this style of thinking, asking, what am I responsible for in this? How am I responsible? This new age, simplistic, take your life back, take responsibility coaching crap is what keeps people stuck. You are not responsible for another person's toxic behavior. And leaving is not always an option because family court and money and all of it. No, you didn't sow this. They did. And they didn't take responsibility for their behavior, and they're never going to take responsibility for their behavior. And when the abusive person doesn't take responsibility, the other person often steps in to do so. Listen, I understand reaping what you sow. I understand that this proverb applies, and I don't know, maybe in cases of people spending money they don't have irresponsibly for designer clothes and fancy cars and then being in terrible debt that they struggle with, or a person embezzling money and then having to go to prison. All that's clear. But when someone emotionally abuses you, that's not a you thing. That's a them thing. And sometimes, for many people, it's not just as easy as just go. Mostly, reap what you sow feels like a judgy proverb that nice people internalize, and the folks who behave badly, well, they just keep behaving badly. And they don't think about what they sow or, frankly, what they reap. Thanks again.